the screens there, we want you to be a lobbyist for a day. Some of you guys might remember the old Queen for a Day program. Now we want you to be lobbyists for a day. Okay? And we want you to go across the street, and certain things that you do as a lobbyist. You know, lobbyists, the role of a lobbyist is to educate and to ask for votes. We do both of those things as lobbyists. In fact, lobbyists play a critical role because legislators really don't know the ins and outs of all the different businesses and all the different legislative issues that come before the legislature, because they come from a variety of different backgrounds, much like many of you in the real estate business come from a variety of different backgrounds. So they don't know everything there is to know about real estate or medical issues. You know, they don't know much about engineering issues or a variety of all the issues that come before the legislature, and they rely on the lobbyists to educate them on those issues. So part of your role today, and this is something different than what we've done in the past, because in the past, we've always asked you to come here, and we've asked you to go and ask for an I vote or ask for a no vote. We've always asked you to do that. Today, we have part of the program where we're going to do that. We're going to ask you to ask for an I vote and a no vote. We're going to ask you to deal with certain issues legislatively. But we want you to educate the legislators, really, to begin with, on two issues. We want to talk to them today about appraisals, which I understand from some of you is a bit of an issue out there in the field. Okay. We want you to talk to them about appraisals, and then we want to talk to them about some of what we're referring to as budget gap threats. I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you. You've probably heard rumor of a slight shortfall in the budget in California. However modest it might be, you know, 19 to 20 billion, but you know, when you're talking thousands of millions, a billion or two probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and they're desperately looking for money. And so some of the areas they're looking may well be in your pocket or in the pocket of your industry. And so we want you to educate the legislators today again, and we're going to talk more about this in a minute, the appraisal issues as well as the budget gap threats. Then we want to also ask you to ask for votes. And we're going to ask you to ask for votes on two issues, which is Senate Bill 1178, which some of you may have heard about over the course of the last few weeks. It's the one that deals with the anti-deficiency protections on refis, and we're going to talk about that in some detail. And then AB 1919, which is a bill dealing with a transfer tax that's being suggested. It seems like every year when we come here, there seems to be another transfer tax being suggested. And we're going to ask you to ask for votes on those two bills. And I vote on the first one, and then they'll vote on the second one. So now let's kind of work through some of these issues here. Let's talk about appraisals. Okay. All of you are familiar with the Home Valuation Code of Conduct. You've heard about that, the HVCC. It was a settlement agreement between the Attorney General of New York and the secondary mortgage market, the government-sponsored entities, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And it was an agreement that really was a settlement of a lawsuit. It was a settlement agreement that was entered into. And the secondary mortgage market, because of its wide influence across the country, when they entered into that agreement, they just decided that they're going to implement that and follow that agreement all over the country. Well, what was maybe going to work in New York, and I'm not sure if it would even work there, but what was maybe going to work in New York all of a sudden became the standard that was being applied across the United States. And the whole idea of that was to get some distance between the appraisers and the lenders or the mortgage loan originators. They wanted to get some distance, you know, because they were concerned that maybe appraisers weren't really as objective as they should be in evaluating properties and coming to values. So they wanted to create some distance. So what kind of grew out of that was this creation of this appraisal management company. You know, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody ever heard of appraisal management companies. Now all of a sudden, appraisal management companies are everywhere. And what we've done is we've introduced another layer into the process that requires profit, actually. You have another business layer in the middle here. Before it was the lender and the appraisers. Now it's the lenders, the appraisal management companies, and the appraisers. So we've added another degree of business here, which on the one hand is certainly good, you know, nobody's against business, but on the other hand, we've added an unnecessary layer, in some people's opinion, that has driven up the costs of appraisals and the complexities and the need to address a number of different issues that you guys are confronting every day in the field. To deal with that, we had a couple of sponsored bills this year that we were moving forward. One would have created and given some additional oversight authority to the Office of Real Estate Appraisers so they can more aggressively regulate appraisal management companies. Because appraisal management companies haven't been regulated at all. And just until last year, a bill passed that brought them under the jurisdiction of the Office of Real Estate Appraisers in January. But in our judgment, and we run this through our committees, there was not enough regulatory strength given to the OREA to regulate these appraisal management companies. So the issues that they needed to be regulated on can't really be done appropriately or adequately. Now, we talked to the legislators about that. We also talked to them about the issue of a portable appraisal. As you know, under the FHA rules, you can move your appraisal. And by the way, a lender today, if you did an appraisal for one lender and then you decided to go with another one, the second lender could accept the first lender's appraisal. They don't have to, and most of them don't. And maybe they don't because they own an appraisal management company, which is a profit center for that matter. I mean, who knows? But these are issues that need to be looked at and need to be addressed, and maybe a regulator with some authority can do that. But the legislators weren't convinced of the need as we tried to demonstrate it across the street. We talked to them about it. We said there's problems with out-of-area appraisals. There's problems with conflicts of interest. There's problems with inaccuracies in appraisals, maybe competency levels. There's lots of problems out there, but we were not able to convince the legislators. So our legislation did not move forward, awaiting additional proof. They want us to prove up, to demonstrate that there is indeed a problem in the field. So where we left it was, we left it with Assemblymember Hayashi is one of our speakers today, saying, well, we'll do an interim hearing. We'll do an oversight hearing during the interim. And we'll hash this out and we'll see what the problem is. Well, part of your challenge today will be to go across the street and begin to educate the members of the legislature on the problems that you are having with out-of-area appraisers, for example. You know, I've heard stories coming from many of you guys that have called me personally and given me horror stories about an appraiser who's maybe a very good appraiser, maybe in the Inland Empire, and now they're doing appraisals along the coast. And maybe they don't really appreciate the nature or that particular neighborhood, and they don't understand how values might be affected by some of the unique characteristics of a particular geographic location. And this is hurting not only property values, but it's hurting you guys because sometimes the properties don't make appraisal. And you know that they should, but the appraiser that you're dealing with is one that maybe isn't particularly familiar with that area. So that's an issue that needs to be dealt with. Correcting inaccuracies is another issue that we've heard a lot of problems with. You know, can I talk to the appraiser? Well, yeah, if something is obviously wrong, you know, you can contact the appraiser. Sometimes the appraisers don't want to talk to you. They're under the opinion that they're not allowed to talk to you, maybe because of the HVCC, which is not necessarily the case, but those are issues that need to be dealt with. Conflicts of interest. You know, is there a conflict of interest between a lender who owns an appraisal management company and contracts with that appraisal management company to provide appraisals? You know, are they really, is there really that distance that the HVC anticipated would be in place if they created these AMCs? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but we're saying that that needs to be something that is addressed by a regulator. It needs to be looked at by the Office of Real Estate Appraisers. Then finally, portable appraisals. Why should somebody, and this just happened to my kids recently, my kids are now adults, it just happened to them where they got an appraisal on Monday, and then 3 days later they thought, well, there's another lender over here. I'd like to maybe go to that lender because they have a better interest rate or better terms. Well, they go to that lender, and that lender says, that's great, but we'll need an appraisal. And so son said, what do you mean you need an appraisal? I got one on Monday. Paid $400 for it or whatever. Got it on Monday. Can we use that one? No. We need our own appraisal. But it's been done by a regulated appraiser who follows the USPAP guidelines and all that stuff. Why can't we use that? Well, we prefer our own. And then, by the way, you might even have a situation where they go ahead and order the new appraisal, and the same appraiser even doesn't. So. It's an issue. The portable appraisal is an issue that we need to address as well because it makes sense, and that's what FHA has already determined. And lenders can do it, but they don't have to do it. And maybe we'd like to see that change as well. So those are some of the issues. The conclusion that we have to reach here when we look at these problems in the field with appraisals, the conclusion we have to reach, first of all, the obvious one, and everybody's been talking about it, NAR's been working on it, you know, suspending or repealing the HVCC, you know, preventing it. It's not really law, it's a settlement agreement, but they would have to maybe put a moratorium on it or something. You guys have heard about that. I mean, obviously that's one approach. The other approach is the approach we're trying in California. You know, we can only do what we can do at our state level, right? So what we're trying to do out here is to get the word across the street that more regulatory oversight is needed in the Office of Real Estate Appraiser to aggressively and effectively regulate appraisal management companies.